Welcome to Connections and Conversations, an advocacy arena podcast, working to increase civic engagement and strengthen our communities. Folks, I have with me Marc G, a law professor, a former prosecutor, and a frequent contributor to our weekly Good Trouble chats, giving us all the legal updates. Well, hello, my friend. I am so glad to have you here again on Advocacy Arena.
I noticed something with Amy Coney Barrett.
Hmm.
I pay attention to the Supreme Court, not just with their opinions, but just how they interact.
Reading their dissents and all of this, getting an understanding of how they think.
Not even that. Not even that. Not even the written dissents, but how they engage with each other. Like Ginsburg and Scalia were like best friends. You would think they hated each other when it came to Supreme Court opinions, but she pushed Antonin Scalia to be more scholarly because he had to be, because he had Justice Ginsburg there that was going to write a scathing rebuke to him. And you actually, as a constitutional scholar, you start giving the Supreme Court we have now with Justice Roberts and, Samuel Alito and Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch, you start to appreciate someone you thought was your adversary, like Scalia, that was so scholarly. Reading his opinions is like reading a legal history. He made sure that even if you disliked his opinion, that he wove in the history and everything he was considering in it. And I'm not even sure he would not like the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia would like the Supreme Court at all. He called them a bunch of morons because these conservatives are not Scalia conservatives. And just to pull back, the reason why I say let's take a look at Amy Coney Barrett when we talk about like our next subject, like Harvard University versus the Trump administration, because she's an originalist. She hadn't really had any judicial experience, but she actually did the welcome party for Ketanji Brown Jackson. She actually planned the party, and they have become actually friends. Their families like associate with each other. I'm not sure how close they are, as close as Supreme Court justices can be, but they talk a lot. And what you're seeing is the emergence of a different kind of judicial philosophy. When it comes to procedural acts, now when it comes to substance, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Amy Coney Barrett are always going to be miles apart. They'll argue and play with each other's words, but when it comes to procedural and rule of law, they're going to be right on point. Ketanji Brown Jackson herself is actually a lifetime public defender. She was never a prosecutor. Ton of legal experience. Very, very smart. And I think Amy Coney Barrett respects that because KBJ has a lot more experience. But going to my next point, there's this thing called originalism. And it's been thrown around, also called, it sometimes gets morphed into textualism. And originalism means, or is a method of interpreting the Constitution based upon the words when they were written, in the late 18th and 19th centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the older justices were supposed to be originalists, but they are originalist deniers and changers. But it's important, though, because originalists argue that the court should not update the Constitution to match current values. That's up to Congress or state legislatures. So under that view, if a right like abortion or same-sex marriage isn't explicitly in the text of the Constitution, it's not protected. That's how we got Dobbs, right? And Barrett joined on Dobbs. That's her view of Dobbs, which overturned Roe in 2022, based on the reasoning that the Constitution never mentioned abortion and it wasn't historically protected. But then also the Constitution never mentioned privacy and it wasn't constitutionally protected either. So there's a dichotomy there. Then we have Roberts, the institutionalist. We saw the latest iteration of Roberts in the hearing that overturned Judge Boasberg's injunction, where he said, y'all didn't file this in the right place. I agree with you that the government overreached and acted unlawfully, didn't turn those planes back by sending those people to CCOT in El Salvador. But even though I agree with that on substance, you didn't file in the right venue. And that's what Justice Sotomayor got her so pissed. And like, if you look at Sotomayor and Roberts' opinions, she's always pissed at Roberts about his being a stickler for the rules, even when like there's like he agrees.
Nitpicking.
Roberts believes in protecting the long-term credibility of the Supreme Court. I don't know how he believes that after he's ruined it, but he's one of them dudes, and we all know people like this that are just stubborn in their own stubbornness. He tries to avoid big, sweeping rulings, and he likes to narrow everything so it's just particular to that case to preserve judicial neutrality. But he runs into big problems.
That hasn't worked out so well for his court, for his rulings. For me, as a citizen, a layperson.
In some cases, it has worked out, though. Remember when the Affordable Care Act came before him in 2012? He was the 5-4 decision. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna uphold the Affordable Care Act because I don't love the law, but so many people will be impacted if I went the other way, and it would undermine. Robert said to himself, I think it would undermine my legitimacy and also the court's legitimacy. I don't know how we got Roberts in 2012 with it's called the NFIB versus Sebelius case 2012. I don't know how we went from that Roberts to the immunity Roberts in 2022, but we did. Amy Coney Barrett's view is somewhat strict and history based. Roberts is cautious and focused. We are at the point in our constitutional republic, our pseudo democracy, where we're relying upon, at the end of the day, we're relying upon Justice Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice John Roberts to get us through this until we vote for a Congress that has numbers that are going to just have some common sense. Until then, they're what we got. Their philosophies matter because they shape how and whether laws are changed. Period. With a T. Period.
I love it. So, having said that, all of these EEOs that he's passed, cases, lawsuits being brought against them, when it comes to some of these major ones, like the ones around the election, given those two having the power that they have and the stance that, I'm going to ask you to do a little prediction because I know, you like to do that kind of thing. So, how do you see those cases rising to the Supreme Court going with those two? Just imagining.
I think the Supreme Court is going to get tired of Trump and this administration and their unlawfulness. I think they already are. Judge Wilkinson out of the Fourth Circuit came out with a huge opinion. It was a 7-page behemoth beast of an opinion that just killed the administration and begged them not to beg for this constitutional crisis because they will lose and get smacked down. That's basically what he said. He's like, don't do this because you're not going to win this. Because there's people like me that respect the law, and we think that you do too because you took an oath to honor the law, respect the law, and actually the president's oath is very specific to above all uphold the Constitution. That's his oath. He serves the Constitution and the people, and all these other people that serve him. They take an oath to the Constitution to defend the Constitution. That's in every oath. I took the oath
We both did as veterans.
several times.
Exactly.
Veteran as a district attorney in 2 offices. It means something.
Exactly.
It's going to be devastating and embarrassing to this administration, and they're already getting embarrassed on other issues that have nothing to do with law, like economics and foreign trade. This is going to be, in particular, their effort to try to dictate what schools and universities do, like Harvard. That's going to be Harvard's complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief that they just filed yesterday. It's going to be devastating to them. And like the Department of Justice, which is made up of the sycophants and the followers of Trump, most of which were his defense team, they're dumb. I don't know what schools they went to, whether they're Harvard or Yale. They're just dumb. They're dumb lawyers, and there's such a thing as dumb lawyers. They're not respected in the industry, and they play this game, and they're gonna lose badly in this Harvard thing. Harvard is suing Trump for freezing 2.2 billion in federal research funding.
Is this the same case? Because I have not dove into, like I normally do, a lot of the news. I've just kind of skimmed. But I did hear today that some other 150, maybe 200 more universities, smaller universities have signed on to a case.
There's probably going to be a lot of universities that join, because this is like a huge government versus academic freedom issue. It's a First Amendment issue. It's also a separation of powers issue. The question: can the executive or the president use funding power to punish dissent or demand ideological conformity from universities? Is that even within his power? He doesn't have the power of the purse. That belongs to Congress. If a university doesn't like, or if he doesn't like the way a university teaches, like, if he feels like Harvard is too liberal, can he take away funding because of that? I don't think so. They have all his words. They can just play the tape in court.
Hmm.
I can't wait for the first hearing. I think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks, because they just filed the case. I would hate to be. I would actually refuse if I was a part of the Department of Justice. I would refuse to defend this case and like leave it up to Pam Bondi's her dumb associates to go into court and try to argue this.
Pretty soon she's going to be the only one who's able to go in, because when they don't argue the dumbness of, those dumb arguments, then they get reprimanded or fired, because this is where we are now.
And also think about it. If the president can dictate to Harvard what they can do, what they can teach, what stops him from doing it to media? What stops him from doing it to nonprofits? And what stops him from doing it to people, and then connect the dots? Like I said, a constellation. Connect the dots. If you don't agree with this president or then with this administration, can you be shipped off too without a hearing, without notice? Opportunity equals due process. Can you be shipped off too? So that's why the Abrego Garcia is bigger than Abrego Garcia. It's not even a gang case, actually. Yeah, I did gang prosecution. I prosecuted MS-13 too. There's nothing about this guy that says MS-13.
Right. And I love that you spoke to that in Advocacy Arena yesterday. And one of the things, again, today, I glanced and noticed that, which we knew that this was happening or would happen. There are two more recent cases in the past 7 days. One out of Arizona, the public media in Arizona reported on it. A guy in Arizona and one in Florida that both got detained. The one in Florida, I think, was only 1 day, but the Arizona one was 9 days, both legal citizens. And interestingly enough, in the government's telling of it, both of these guys admitted to being illegal, having illegally entered the country. So, what are the chances of? I mean, you can just say anything, but turns out they're both American citizens. And this, I kind of reposted that story because I'm like, is this the homegrown that, he's talking about sending down there, which means any of us, you look the part.
Right. And it's so easy. It's not easy to follow the law, but other presidents has followed the law and they deported more people than Trump has. As a matter of fact, in March 2024, Biden deported more people than Trump did. Obama was trying to stretch the law too. Obama eliminated some due process. He sped up the process and he got sued by the ACLU. So we have to look at this like, immigration is not just a Trump thing. It's been a presidential thing for like the last 20 years. And there is a problem with it that Congress has not been able to deal with on the process, because every president is trying to eliminate the amount of unlawful entries that go on, and they call them contacts or engagements. Every president is trying to lessen the amount of engagements they have at the border. It's not something that's partisan, actually. But Trump, in this case, is not following the law.
Right. The problem is, like you said, all presidents have had, because it has been an issue, because, there needs to be some legislation done around our immigration laws, and they just don't. They have not had the will and the ability, the makeup to do it, because this is my opinion. I see that the Republicans do not really want to address it except in these egregious kinds of ways, but they want to continue to be able to kind of campaign on it and to build fear and things, around it. But every opportunity they're given to actually bring real redress to the issue, they're not interested.
I totally agree. And they had, well, under Biden, they had a bipartisan immigration law that would have solved a lot of the problems that they have now. But Trump put a stop to that, and because this is the kind of thing he wanted to do. And maybe next time we talk more about, what this is leading to,
I would love that.
because I have some insight into what is happening. But I do think that, surprise, surprise to Trump, many of his judicial appointments are actually striking some of the stuff he's doing down. And so, in his first term, he did appoint some very conservative judges, but a lot of those judges didn't go his way in 2020, and they're not going his way in 2024 either. Actually, my cousin was appointed by Trump, out of the Southern District of California. I know he would not. I don't know his current cases, but I know he would not be okay with just subverting the law. He's a rule. He's like a staunch rule of law former prosecutor, like myself. Did some defense work at a huge white collar defense law firm, and got appointed to the bench by Trump early on in his first term out of California. This is egregious. The undermining of, or an attempt to undermine, what we consider our rule of law, which is the staple of our democracy. It's the pillar, rule, law, and of is the space in between. That's where the arguments are. But you have these pillars that are the foundation of where we are. The reason why it's so important is because, as black folks, you as a black woman and me as a black man, but also with people that love the law and love the way we live and love the fact that we're under this great idea of, number one, a country of laws, number two, a more perfect union, meaning we can always be better as a society.
Right. It's a continuing process of perfecting it.
We cannot be better unless we got the rule of law down pat, right? We can't build upon things that are breaking our country apart. And we might have discrimination. We do have discrimination. We have race. We have racism. We have all these things. But without laws, we're not protected. Without laws, I'm not protected to go outside. Because I'm pretty sure if there was no law against killing me, there's some guy out there who's a racist that would love to do so. So to be that, I don't mean to be that base and that extreme, but that's a good example of why the rule of law is important. And then when we get more particular and nuanced and get granular with rule of law, it's important to hold leadership accountable to it as much as we would hold ourselves accountable to just traffic. And if you imagine them holding the leadership accountable, meaning if you break the law, the Constitution steps in, the court step in. If you break the law as a criminal, you get held accountable. It's like when you drive on the freeway, when you enter the freeway, there's a scary part when you enter, when traffic is already going. How do you fit, right? That rule of law is the freeway. How people drive is the application of it. So, to give you a good example of the differences, so when people say the rule of law is not working, it's not the rule of law that's not working, because the freeway is there. It's the application of it. If you come on too aggressively and you don't yield, there's going to be a problem. If someone doesn't yield to you and y'all going the same speed and you're trying to merge, you're going to crash. That's application. That's not the rule of law. So it's a good way to look at it, and also, it's the people, the cars that say, "Hey, I'm gonna slow down and let you in because I'm going too fast, and we're not gonna. I can see in 200 feet, we're not gonna make it. I'm slow down, let you in." That's application of the rule of law, and it works, right? So that's the way we need to keep going. There's always going to be disagreements between myself and my conservative counterparts, and myself and my more progressive counterparts, when it comes to a bunch of things. I just got in a big debate about homelessness yesterday. But the one thing that we have in common is that we want to preserve some middle ground here, a fulcrum of justice. And unfortunately, we're at an imbalance on that fulcrum right now. And we need to get that balance back so that we can actually make real arguments that are substantive with regard to how we move forward on policy, and not worried about presidents and a whole administration breaking the rules and breaking the law.
I love it. And I think that is a good note for us to wrap up on. And we will plan our next discussion because I do think that with this administration, we're going to be meeting and talking about the law a lot. So, you're always welcome, of course, in our weekly Good Trouble chats. And like I said, I do think it's important that maybe we start to make a regular appointment here to, kind of give people updates of what's going on and break it down to them. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for being here with me.
of course. I love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, and if you want, please tell us about you're having a special pod.
Yeah, we're doing legalese with Legally Glenn. And I got Meredith on board. Meredith wants to do it too. Through Advocacy Arena, we are maybe not similar backgrounds, but we have similar outlooks, and I love for her to be a part of it. And we're going to be going knee deep into some of the actual cases that are not only go to Supreme Court of the United States has decided, but also looking forward. I like looking forward and prognosticating on where we see the court going. So it's going to be good analysis for about an hour, and then also answering questions about just people's questions, but really good legal analysis about where we've been, where we're going, and what these things mean, more so than what we can get in other pods where we're just kind of doing a snippet and can only devote like 5 minutes.
All right.
Yeah, well, getting granular. That's my favorite word.
And it's going to be on Spoutable.
May 4th at 6:30 Eastern Time. May 4th.
All right. Looking forward to it, man. And again, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to Connections and Conversations. This is one of many wonderful interviews that we bring to you to help connect you to a larger community of advocates and change makers across the country. You'll get a glimpse into the various ways people are making an impact in their communities. My hope is that it will inspire you to get engaged in some small way as well. We can't all do everything, but at this moment in history, we can all do something. What are you doing? One of the things you can do is to continue to listen, subscribe, and share this Advocacy Arena podcast. You can also join and support the growing grassroots Advocacy Arena community in other ways. Join our weekly live chats hosted on Spoutable every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to our Substack to get great articles on important topics and exclusive access to extended interview conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've got some exciting programming lined up. And keep listening to our regular podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe and give us that all-important 5-star review.